Very good morning to all of you, my friends. Welcome back. I hope you guys were able to solve the questions on material variances and labor variances. If you guys have any doubts, any queries of the questions related to material and labor variances, you guys can please post your queries. There is a query from Anmol, sir. As you told us that whatever the labor idle time is given in the question, it will impact only mix and yield variance, not the labor time variance. But in illustration number 7, at page number 13.30, they have shown idle hours impact on labor time variance. Also, sir, what to do next? Admin, sir, are there any error in the video? One of the student posted that there is some technical error in the video. Please check. So see, Anmol, it's very simple. If you consider idle time here, see where, let me give you a brief about what all I've discussed in labor variance. The first what we used to do is labor cost variance. The same way, standard hours into standard rate minus actual hour into actual rate. Now, two parts. Labor rate variance and labor time variance. If it is labor rate variance, then it will be standard rate minus actual rate into actual hours paid. Now, guys, very important. No lecture has just started, Sanya. You're not late. Now, very important. Either we can consider idle time here or we can consider idle time here. Both the approaches are correct. If we remove the impact of idle time here, then from here actual hour worked will be considered. Actual hour worked, actual hour worked, and actual hour worked. But if we are considering idle time here, then actual hour paid will be considered for labor time variance, and then idle hours, then actual hours worked and actual hours worked. Let's say if I consider idle time variance here. Idle time variance. If I consider idle time variance here, it will be idle hours into standard. Now the impact of idle time is removed here only. The impact of idle time is removed here only. So this will be calculated. This labor time variance will be calculated using standard hours minus actual hour worked into standard. Since we have removed the impact of idle time here only, so from here and onwards, actual hour worked will be considered. Similarly, labor mix variance. So here and onwards, actual hour worked only. That is standard mix minus actual hours worked into standard rate. Similarly, labor yield variance, or we can say efficiency variance. Again, very simple, guys. Standard hours minus standard mix into standard. So there are two approaches. See, there are two approaches. Either you can consider idle time here or you can consider idle time here. Both the approaches are correct. It's up to you. If you want to follow this approach also, this is also correct. If you want to follow this approach also, this is also correct. So it's up to you. Don't worry, guys. So I hope, Anmol, your query is resolved. Yes, Anmol. No, idle hours will have no impact on rate variance because rate is what? How much at how much rate we were supposed to pay minus the actual rate into the actual hours paid. कितने hours का payment किया है तभी तो rate variance पता चलेगा. No, not required. Both the approaches are correct. Understood. So no need to mention it in note, Anmol. So let me open the study material once. Okay, great. So there are few queries from students. 1 second. So can you please explain it is fifth? Can you solve? Let me check what is fifth and sixth. Sanya Fadke, when talking about the loss due to idle hours, see, the loss due to idle hours, it will be calculated as per standard rate only. The rate difference we have already considered in labor rate variance. Okay, let me check, Swati. So let's start with illustration number 5 first. I'm discussing illustration number 5 from the study material. That is standard and actual figures of a firm R is under. I'm discussing illustration number 5 from the study material. There is a query from Shweta that's please discuss illustration number 5. So let's start with illustration number 5, then I'll discuss illustration number 6, Swati. So following is the data given, that is the standard and the actual figures of a firm are is given. Standard time for the job is 1000 hours. There is a query on illustration number 5 from Sweta. Admin sir, on BOS app, the lecture is not visible. Admin sir, 2-3 student has mentioned that on app, the lecture is not visible. Mr. Bandi has mentioned, Avinash has mentioned. I think 2, 3 students has mentioned this. I request you guys to please refresh your page. Okay, Shweta, no problem. I'll discuss practical question 5. One of the student has also mentioned that Sanya Fadke Srinivasan that it is not, it is not visible over BOS app. Admin sir, Manish sir, 4-5 स्टूडेंट्स बोल रहे हैं कि BOS ऐप पे विजिबल नहीं है. प्लीज चेक ना. कीप द सेशन ऑन होल्ड फॉर सम टाइम प्लीज. आई एम ऑफ. Welcome back, guys. So I think some updation process is going on BOS app. So those who can view the lecture on BOS app can view it on BOS. Rest you guys can check it over YouTube. I hope it is visible over YouTube, guys. So now let's proceed further without wasting time. So Shweta has raised a query on practical question number 5 rather than illustration number 5. So I'll be discussing first illustration number 6 because I think one or two of the students has mentioned that, sir, please discuss illustration number 6. So let's start with illustration number 6 first, and then I'll discuss practical problem number 5. So let's start with illustration number 6 of study material. I request you guys to please open your study material. It's on page number 13.29. So let's start with illustration number 6. The standard output of product EXE is 25 units per hour in manufacturing department of a company employing 100 workers. So they are manufacturing 25 units per hour, and there are total 100 workers in the factory. It means what? That collectively 100 workers are working for 1 hour to manufacture 25 units. So collectively 100 workers are working for an hour to manufacture 25 units. Therefore, 1 unit will take how much hours? 100 workers for 100 hours. So 1 unit take approx 4 hours. So to manufacture 1 unit, we require 4 hours. Now, when talking about the actual data, it is given in the question that in a 42 hours week, the department produced 1040 units of EXE despite of time, despite 5% of the time paid being lost due to abnormal reasons. So it is an idle time. The hourly wages actually paid were 6.2, 6 and 5.7 respectively to 10, 30 and 60 of the workers. Calculate the relevant labor variances. So so when talking about the budgeted data, when talking about the budgeted data, when talking about the budgeted data, 1 unit takes 4 hours. 4 hours and the rate per hour is 6. This data is given for 1 unit. 4 hours, 1 unit requires 4 hours. 1 unit requires 4 hours and the rate is rupees 6 per hour. Now, when talking about the actual data, actual units manufactured were 1040. Actual production was 1040 units. Actual production was 1040 units. When talking about the hours and the rate, see herein there are 3 categories of worker. The category is not mentioned. The hourly actual wages paid were 6.2, 6 and 5.7 respectively to 10, 30 and 60 workers. So here in the details are given for 42 hours week. So 42 hours into 10 workers, it will be 420 hours. 42 hours into 10 workers, 420 hours we were paying at the rate 420 hours we were paying at the rate rupees 6.2 per hour. The second category of workers are total number of workers are 30, and for 42 hours week we are paying them approx for 1260 hours. For 1260 hours we are paying them at the rate rupees 6. And for the remaining third category of workers, the total number of workers is 60 into 42 hours. So we are paying them for 2520 hours, and we are paying them at the rate 5.7. So the total amount will be 2604 7560 So this data is given in question. Now this data is for 1 unit, this data is for 1040 units. So we have to make them comparable. So we will prepare revised standard. Wherein hours, rate and amount. 1 unit 4 hours. So 1040 into 4. One unit takes 4 hours. So 1040 units takes 4160 hours. Into the rate is 6. So 24,960. Further, the details are given as regards idle hours also. Further, the details are given as regards idle hours also. So idle hours are given. That is 5%. Herein the idle hours are given, that is 5% of the normal hours. So 420 into 5%, this will be 21. 1260 into 5%, this will be 63. And 2520 into 5%, this will be 126. So hours worked we will get very simple. This will be 2394. This will be 1197. This will be 399. So now my table is ready, my master chart is ready. Now I can solve any question. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your query. No need to, Sanya. See, now you can easily solve this question. I mean, So now let's start with the calculation part also. Again, very simple. The first one is labor cost variance, that is 24,960 minus 24,528. Okay. Okay. So I hope you guys are thorough with what I have discussed till now. Further, I think that issue is already fixed, so you guys can view the lecture over VOS app also now. Now let's start with labor rate variance. Very simple, guys. 6 minus 6.2 into 420. 6 minus 6.2 into 420. 6 minus 6 into 1260. And 6 minus 5.7 into 2520. So this will be 84 adverse. This will be nil. 756 favorable. So this will be 672. Further, I'll write idle time also. See, idle hours into standard rate. So we can directly write idle hours, that is 4200 minus 3990. That is total idle hours are 210 into my standard rate, that is 6. So this will be 1260 adverse. This will always be adverse. Now the next variance is labor time or efficiency variance. Labor time and efficiency variance, again very simple, guys. 4160 minus. Now we will not be taking this figure because see the difference is 4160 minus 4200. That is 40 hours. Out of this 40 hours, I have already considered the idle hours. So I have already removed the effect of idle hours. So now this figure will play an important role. We'll be comparing this figure with this figure because I have considered idle time here only. So 4160 minus 3990. We have only one standard rate, that is 6. This will be 1020 favorable. So 1020 plus 672 minus 1260 will get 432. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your query. Since there is only one category of labor, so no, we can't calculate mix and yield variance. You can please refresh. Sanya, it's visible now. Further, if you guys have any doubts in this explanation, you guys can please post your queries. Waiting for your queries, guys. I request you guys to please copy the solution. I think 2-3 students were finding this part very difficult. I mean, I think it is Prashant Kumar, Swati, and one more student has mentioned that, sir, please discuss illustration number 6. So anyway, Swati and Prashant, hopefully your query is resolved. Sanya, any doubts in this question? No need to split, Sanya. Just follow the instructions that are given in the question. So Swati and Prashant and Sanya, hopefully your query is resolved. Any other doubts? Swati, hopefully your query is resolved, Swati. And Mr. Prashant. Sanya, please check. It is 672 favorable, 1020 favorable, minus 1260 adverse. So it will be 432. Okay, so now let's start with practical question number 5, the labor part only. I request you guys to please open practical question number 5, page number 13.59. One of the student is facing difficulty in practical question number 5. I hope you guys have copied this part. So let's start with practical question number 5. I'll be only discussing the labor variances, not the material variance. Material variance is very easy and simple. So the following standards have been set to manufacture a product wherein 2 units of A, 3 units of B, and 15 units of C. Further, the rates are also given. When talking about the direct labor hours, it takes 3 hours to manufacture a unit and they are paid at the rate 8 per hour. (13.59) page number. So the budgeted data is given wherein hours and rate. That is, to manufacture a product, it takes 3 hours and they are paid at the rate 1. The rate is 8 per hour. Further, the company manufactured and sold 6,000 units of product during the year. So when talking about the actual data, The company manufactured 6,000 units. So output is how much? 6,000 units, wherein the details of the material used is given. Now the company worked for 17,500 direct labor hours during the year. For 2,500 hours, the company paid at the rate rupees 12 per hour, while for the remaining, the wages are paid at the rate standard rate. So the company worked for 17,500 hours. So for 2,500 hours, they were paid, the company were paying 12 per hour. So for 2,500 hours, the company were paying at the rate 12 per hour. And for the remaining 15,000 hours, the company were paying at the standard rate. So now this part is done. So amount. So this is 1,20,000. This is 30,000. Total amount paid is 1,50,000. Further, this data is given for 1 unit, so we'll prepare the revised standard. So 1 unit 3 hours, so 6,000 units, 18,000 hours at the rate 8 per hour. So this will be 1,44,000. So now we are ready with the master chart. Now we can easily calculate all the variances. Let me check, Shweta. I think, Shweta, you mentioned that you are finding difficulty in labor rate and efficiency variance. So when talking about the labor cost variance, it is 1,44,000 minus 1,50,000. So this is 6,000 adverse. When talking about rate variance, very simple. 8 minus 12 into 2,500 and 8 minus 8 into 15,000. So this will be 0 and this will be 10,000 adverse. When talking about efficiency variance, $18,000 minus 17,500 into my standard rate, that is 8. So this will be 4,000 favorable. This is a very easy question, Shweta. I request you to please recheck your calculation. Nisha Kumari, there are two approaches if idle hours are given in the question. The first approach I discussed in the previous session, and the second approach I discussed in the previous question, that is, I think, illustration number 6. So you can follow any of the approach, Nisha. Yes, Shweta. So the best approach is prepare this master chart. Once this table is ready, you can solve any question. Even if missing figure questions are there, just put a question mark and try to figure out the missing figure. Your format should be very clear: budget, revised standard, and actual. That's it. Miss Shiva Ranjini, you are asking about illustration number 8. Let me check, Shiva Ranjini. So there is a query on illustration number 8. I'll be preparing the master chart. So once the master chart is ready, you can follow the concepts what I have discussed, and then you can solve the question because timing, the timing is the constraint. So let's start with illustration. I request you guys to please copy this explanation first. Okay, so Manohar Yadav, see the mix variance. If a particular product is manufactured using only one ingredient, then how can you calculate the mix? If only one type of labor is employed, how you will calculate the mix? Mix का question या yield का question कब आता है? Mix का question कब आता है? When there are two or more than two types of raw material or two or more than two types of labor. Okay, so there is a query from Manohar sir. In question 5, there is nowhere written that the budgeted data is for 1 unit. So let me check, my dear. You have to read the question carefully. Half of the work is done if you read the question carefully. See, read the first line of the question, Manohar. The following standard data have been set to manufacture a product. It means the details are given for a particular product. So let me discuss illustration number 8. So the standard labor employment and the actual labor engaged in a week for a job are as under, wherein the details are given as regards skilled, semi-skilled and unskilled workers. The number of workers are given. The actual number of worker employed are given, the standard wages and the actual wages rate per hour. During 40 hours week, the gang produced only 1800 standard labor hours of the work. You are required to calculate the labor variances. So let's start with this question. Let's first find out the budgeted data. Now here in the rate is given per hour. Here the rate is given per hour and the actual number and standard numbers of workers are given. Further, it is given that it is a 40 hours week. So we'll first calculate the budgeted hours. That is the standard number of workers in the gang is 32 into 40 hours a week. So 1280 hours. Similarly, 12 into 40, 480 hours. 6 into 40, this will be 240 hours. When talking about the rate, it is given that is 3, 2, and 1. This is the budgeted data given. Now, when talking about the actual data also, it is given in the question, that is hours, rate, and amount. So 28 into 40, this will be 1120. 18 into 40, this will be 720. And 4 into 40, this will be 160. This will be 2000. Further, the rate is given, that is 4, 3, and 2. 4, 3, and 2. So this will be 320. This will be 4, 4, 8, 0. 2160. Now, this is the budgeted data and actual data given. Now, the point is, when talking about labor, the basis of comparison is output. Herein in this question, the output is not given in units, but it is given that, see, read the line, guys. During the 40 hours working week, the gang produced only 1800 standard labor hours of work. So herein in this question, instead of units, instead of number of units, the output is given in number of hours. Herein in this question, instead of number of units, the output is given in number of hours. So even though they were worked for 2000 hours, even though they work for 2000 hours, they are getting an output of only 1800 hours as output. They are getting an output of only 1800 hours. So this data is given for 200 hours of output. 200 hours of output, wherein this data is given for 1800 hours of output. So we have to prepare revised standard. This data is given for 2000 hours of output, and this data is given for only 1800 hours of output. So 2000 को हमें 1800 के बराबर लेके आना है. So hours, rate, and amount. So 1280 hours for 2000 hours of output. So for 1800 hours of output, how much? So this will be 1152. Similarly, 480 hours for 2000 hours of output, my actual output is 1800. So this will be 432. And for unskilled, 240 hours for 2000 output. So for 1800 hours output, how much? This will be 216. So for 1800 hours of output, my budgeted cost was only 4536, but the amount I spent actually is 6960. So now the master chart is ready. You guys can solve any question. So this is the budgeted, this is the standard data, this is the actual data. You can calculate any of the variances. If you guys have any doubt in this illustration, you guys can please post your queries. Idle time will be mentioned very clearly, Sanya. See, Sanya. See, Sanya, herein the output is of 2000 hours. And herein, even though they work for 2000 hours, even though they actually work for 2000 hours, but the standard output is generated only for 1800 hours. Even though they work for 2000 hours, but the standard output is only 1800 hours. $200 is not idle time. Very good, Swati. Anyone else having any doubts? Divya, are you present in the class? Sai, Divya, Gunturi, are you present? Anyone having any doubts? Mamta Yadav, Shweta. This question is a bit different from the regular question. Sushil Kumar, Pratna Sarthi, Mr. Prashant. Anyone having any doubt? Tanishka, are you present in class? Any doubts, Tanishka? Avinash, any doubts? Shiv Ranjini, hopefully your query is resolved now. I hope you can solve any of the, I hope you will be able to solve this question now. Shiv Ranjini, I request you guys to please copy this explanation. Shiv Ranjani, you can solve this question now. The answers will match with the, the answer will be the same as mentioned in study material. Just don't see the solution, solve the question as per the concepts I have discussed. You will get the same answers that are given in the study material. The language is different, the words are different, rest all the concepts are same. So try to solve the question using this format, you'll be able to solve. Anyone having any doubts in this part, then you guys can please post your queries. See, the budgeted data is given for 200 hours of output and the actual data is given for 1800 hours of output, Sanya. So now let's proceed further. $2,000, my dear. Great, Sushil. So the point is very clear. We are done with material and labor variances. So my point is very clear. If the budgeted output and actual output. See, do make a note of these points before approaching the solution. The first point is that if the budgeted output and actual output are same, I repeat again, if the budgeted output and actual output are same, no need to prepare revised standard. The figures are comparable. Second point, if the budgeted output and actual output are not same, then we have to prepare revised standard. Third point, try to prepare the master chart, that is budget, revised standard and actual. आप कैसे भी करके इस चार्ट में अपना डेटा फिट कर दीजिए. Once the chart is ready, you can solve any questions. See, study material में काफी questions में language अलग use किया है. But the point is we should get the final answer, that is my variances. The formulas and all are same, the variances and all are same. The point is स्टडी मटेरियल में कुछ क्वेश्चंस अलग तरीके से सॉल्व किए गए हैं, कुछ क्वेश्चन अलग तरीके से सॉल्व किए गए. सो बेटर इट इज ट्राई टू मेमोराइज द कंसेप्ट and try to solve the question using the format what I have discussed. I assure you, you will be able to solve any questions on material and labor variances. The treatment is already done, Anmol. So now let's proceed further with the investigation of the third department, that is fixed overhead department. So, so let's start with fixed overheads now. Now, when talking about calculation of fixed overhead variances, again, in 90% questions, the question will be given in this format, that is budget and actual. This type of format will be given in 95% of the question. But if the question is not in this format, try to convert it in this format. See, let's say the days are given wherein 25 and 26. Let's say the days are given, that is 25 and 26. Hours are given, let's say 30,000 and 33,000. Units are given, let's say 30,000 and 32,500. And fixed overheads are given. One second, let me check the question. Let's say fixed overheads are given, that is 45,000 and 50,000. So most of the question will always be given in this format. But if by any chance the questions are not in this format, then you can convert it in this format. There are no idle hours in this question, Sanya. The 200 hours is basically due to inefficiency of the workers. So now let's proceed further. So the point is very simple, guys. If the question is given in this format, well and good. If not in this format, then try to convert every question in this format. Try to convert each and every question in this format. Now let's start with the solution. We'll first calculate fixed overheads, cost variance. We'll first calculate fixed overhead cost variance. If the idle hours are given, then only you have to assume that these are idle hours. That's it. The idle hours will be clearly mentioned in the question, Sanya. So now let's start with fixed overhead cost variance. This fixed overhead cost variance is nothing but under or over absorption of overhead. What we do in under or over absorption of overhead, we first calculate the absorption rate. See, let's refresh the concepts what we discussed in overhead. सबसे पहले हम लोग क्या करते थे in overhead? We used to calculate the absorption rate. That is budgeted overhead divided by budgeted units or whatever it is. So once the absorption rate is calculated, we used to calculate the absorbed overheads. And after calculating the absorbed overhead, what we used to do, we used to compare it with actual overhead. So this is how we were getting under or over absorption of overhead. So herein also the same approach, that is 45,000 overheads for how many units? For 30,000 units. So we will get the absorption rate. If we apply this absorption rate to the number of units that are actually manufactured, we will get the absorbed overhead. So this is what we will be getting is what? Absorbed overheads. Minus my actual overheads are 50,000. These are my actual overheads. So we will get the fixed overhead cost variance. So 45,000 एकदम सीधी और आसान भाषा में समझने जाए in simple language, 45,000 overheads for 30,000 units. 45,000 overheads for 30,000 units. So for 32,500 units, how much? 48,750. कुल मिला के 48,750 should be my overheads, and the amount I actually spent is 50,000. So 1250 adverse. सिंपल टर्म्स में समझने जाए तो हमें 48,750 खर्च करना चाहिए था. हमने खर्च कितना किया? 50,000. So 1,250 extra we spent. So that's why 1,250 adverse. So my absorbed overheads are 48,750 and my actual overheads are what? 50,000. So we can say it is under absorption. So that's why adverse. Sorry. So I repeat again, 45,000 overheads for 30,000 units. So for 32,500 units, how much? 48,750. And the amount we actually spent is 50,000. 1250 extra. So that is what we call as adverse. Very good, Shweta. Now two parts, guys. Fixed overhead expenditure variance. Fixed overhead expenditure variance. So fixed overhead expenditure variance means what? We have to simply calculate the difference because fixed overheads remain constant at all the level of production. So we can directly calculate fixed overhead expenditure variance, that is 45,000 minus 50,000. So this is 5,000 adverse. 45,000 minus 50,000. So this is how I'll get 5,000 adverse. Now next is fixed overhead. Very important, guys, volume variance. When talking about this word volume, it talks about units. The name itself says volume. Volume means what? Units. So here in units, very simple, guys. We were supposed to manufacture how many units? 30,000 units. But we actually manufactured 32,500 units. So it's a good sign of the company. Guys, again, Don't see the calculation. Listen to what I am saying. Then only you will be able to decide that whether the variance is favorable or adverse. So herein, we were supposed to manufacture only 30,000 units, but we actually manufactured 32,500 units. That is 2,500 units extra we manufactured. So we can call it as favorable for the company. So 30,000 units we were supposed to manufacture, but we actually manufactured 32,500 units. So 2,500 units extra we manufactured. From here and onwards, we'll be taking the budgeted rate only, because the rate with the difference between the budgeted and actual overheads we have already considered here. So from here and onwards, we'll be taking the budgeted rate only. So very important, guys, this is what the number of units. So we will be using the rate per unit. That is 45,000 divided by 30,000. So this will be 1.5 per unit. I repeat again, how come 1.5 per unit? Very simple, guys. 45,000 overheads divided by 30,000 units. So this will be 3750, very big favorable. So I repeat again, guys, when talking about volume variance, it talks about the number of units. That is, कितने units manufacture करने चाहिए थे और कितने units हमने manufacture किए. So how much extra number of units we manufacture? 2,500. So it's a good sign for the company. So that's why it is favorable. Now this increase in units can be due to increase or decrease in units can be due to following reasons. So first, it will be due to the number of days, or it may be due to the number of hours, or it can be due to efficiency or inefficiency. So let's start with first of all the days part. So fixed overheads. Calendar variance. Very important, guys. When talking about this word calendar, it means it talks about the number of days. When talking about calendar variance, it talks about the number of days worked. So now, guys, again, do pay attention to what I'm saying. My workers were supposed to work for 25 days. My workers were supposed to work for 25 days, but they actually worked for 26 days. मतलब कि मैंने अपने एम्प्लॉइज को बोला कि भाई 25 days ऑफिस आना है, but my workers did a great job. They reported to work for 26 days. That is 1 day extra they reported. Just forget about inefficiency कि काम efficiently किया या inefficiently किया. That is a different thing. My point is, my workers were supposed to report to office for 25 days, but they actually reported for 26 days. 1 day extra they reported. So it's a good sign for the company. That's why it is favorable. So my workers were supposed to report for 25 days in a month, but they reported or they worked for 26 days in a month. So 1 day extra they reported. Since it is rate day, so we will be calculating the rate per day, that is 45,000 divided by 25. So it will be 1,800 per day. How come 1,800 per day? Very simple, guys. 45,000 Very important, this variance will be favorable. Sanya, again, do pay attention. Do pay attention. I'm not talking about efficiency or inefficiency. Very simple. We were supposed to work for 25 days in a month. We work for 26 days in a month. One day extra we worked. Again, this efficiency part, we will be discussing this part separately. But yes, when talking about the straight away information that is given in the question, that is, we were supposed to work for 25 days, we work for 26 days, one day extra we worked. So this one day is what favorable for the company. So we are done with units, we are done with number of days. Now hours. Fixed overhead capacity variance. Fixed overhead capacity variance. When talking about capacity, it talks about the number of hours. So now, very important, guys, this part is bit on the trickier side because most of the students find it difficult कि sir ये adverse होगा या favorable होगा. Very important, guys. Do pay attention to what I'm speaking, guys. We have the capacity to work for 30,000 hours. We have the capacity to work for 30,000 hours in 25 days. We have the capacity, I'm writing this for your reference. We have the capacity to work for 30,000 hours in 25 days. Therefore, we can say for 26 days, actually we work for 26 days. So for 26 days, our capacity is how much? Our capacity is 30,000 hours हमारी काम करने की capacity है 25 days में. So for 26 days, therefore for 26 days, our capacity is 31,200 hours. We have the capacity to work for 30,000 hours in 25 days, but हमने काम भी एक दिन एक्स्ट्रा किया. कितने दिन किया? 26 days. So for 26 days, our capacity is 31,200 hours. However, in these 26 days, we worked for how many hours? 33,000 hours. I hope this part of board is visible. Clearly visible. So in these 26 days, we work for 33,000 hours. That is 1,800 hours ज्यादा काम किया. See, very important. 25 days हमारी 30,000 hours की कैपेसिटी थी. So 26 days में हमारी कैपेसिटी कितनी थी? 31,200 hours की कैपेसिटी थी. But in these 26 days, instead of 31,200 hours, we worked for 33,000 hours. It means what? We have worked above our capacity. So it's a good sign for the company. So 31, however, in these 26 days, we work for 33,000. That is, we worked above our capacity by 1,800 hours. How come 1,800 hours? 33,000 minus 31,200. So we have the capacity to work for 30,000 hours in 25 days. Therefore, for 26 days, our capacity was for how many hours? 31,200 hours. However, in these 26 days, we work for 33,000 hours. That is, we worked above our capacity by 1,800 hours. How come 1,800 hours? 33,000 minus. So therefore, variance will be 1800 hours. Since it is number of hours, so we'll be taking the rate per hour. That is 45,000 divided by 30,000 hours. So this will be 1.5 per hour. So this will be 2700 favorable. Very important, the major point of discussion is that it is favorable or adverse. So the point is, my point is very simple, guys. We have the capacity to work for 31,200 hours in 26 days. See, agar days given nahi hote, see, let's say these days are not given, we can calculate it straight away. That our capacity was 30,000 hours. We work for 33,000 hours. That is 3,000 hours above our capacity. So it's favorable. But herein, hours बढ़ रहे हैं, मगर days भी ज्यादा काम कर रहे हैं. So we have to consider the days also in capacity variance. So we have the capacity to work for 31,200 hours in 26 days. But in these 26 days, we work for 33,000 hours. That is 1,800 hours above my capacity. So that's why we can call it as favorable. If you guys have any doubts, then you guys can please post your query. How come this 1.5 per hour? Very simple, guys. 45,000 rupees divided by 30,000. So since this part is a bit tricky, I have written the explanation also. आपको एग्जाम में ये explanation लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है. Now let's start with the last part, that is fixed overhead efficiency variance. Efficiency means what? कितने टाइम में काम कंप्लीट करना था और कितना टाइम हमने लगाया. How much time we should have taken and how much time we actually took. So, see, in this question, very simple. We have 30,000 units and they were supposed to be manufactured in 30,000 hours. This information is given in the question. It means what? One unit should take not more than 1 hour. So it means the 32,500 units should be completed in 32,500 hours. But to manufacture these 32,500 units, again, very important, guys, as per the target set, 30,000 units should be manufactured in 30,000 hours. It means one unit should take not more than 1 hour. एक unit 1 घंटे में बन जाना चाहिए था. But however, we manufactured 32,500 units. So these 32,500 units should be manufactured in 32,500 hours. But to manufacture these 32,500 units, we actually consumed 33,000 hours. That is 500 hours is what? 500 hours is what my inefficiency. जो काम 32,500 hours में complete करना चाहिए था, it was completed in 33,000 hours. That is 500 hours is what? My inefficiency into the rate per hour, that is 1.5 per hour, will get 750 adverse. Since it is my inefficiency, so that's why adverse. Very important, guys. When talking about efficiency or inefficiency, the work was supposed to be completed in 32,500 hours. But I actually completed in 33,000 hours. So 500 hours is my inefficiency, so that's why it is adverse. So now, let's first refresh what we have discussed in this part. Then I'll give you time to post your queries and write this explanation. So right from start, that is fixed overhead cost variance, it talks about under or over absorption of overhead. सीधी और आसान भाषा में 45,000 खर्च होना चाहिए था 30,000 यूनिट्स पे. So 32,500 units, how much? 48,750. But we actually spent 50,000. So 1,250 is my extra expense. So that's why it is adverse. Second part, expenditure variance 45,000 खर्च होना चाहिए था. खर्च हुआ कितना? 50,000. How much extra we spent? 5,000. So adverse. When talking about volume variance, it talks about what? Units. ये units की बात करता है. How much units we were supposed to manufacture? 30,000 units. But we actually manufactured 32,500 units. 2,500 units extra we manufactured. So it's a good sign for the company. Since it is number of units, so we'll be taking the rate per unit. So 2,500 into 1.53750. 1 second, guys. So 3750 favorable. Now next part, calendar variance. Very important, guys. When talking about this word calendar, it talks about the number of days. कितने दिन काम करना चाहिए था? 25 days. How many days we actually worked? 26 days. 1 day extra we worked. So it's a good sign for the company. That's why it is favorable. When talking about capacity variance, or capacity was to work for 31,200 hours in 26 days. But in these 26 days, we work for 33,000 hours. That is 1,800 hours, much more than what I expected. 1,800 hours above my capacity. So that's why this variance is favorable. Very important. Overheads में problem आता है, adverse है या favorable है. So guys, this variance is favorable because we worked above our capacity. Next is fixed overhead efficiency variance. 1 unit, 1 hour. 32,500 units, 32,500 hours. But we actually took 33,000 hours. So these 33,500 hours is what? My inefficiency. So that's why this variance is adverse. Since I have calculated hours, so I'll be using the rate per hour, budgeted rate per hour. Here also I have calculated hours, so I have used the rate per hour. Here I have calculated days, so I have used the rate per day. Here I have calculated units, so I have used the rate per unit. So this is all what about fixed overhead. I request you guys to please copy this explanation. Further, what you have understood from this explanation, do write your notes do write your notes and your understanding in your notebook, because every time you can't see the recorded lecture. So better write your notes in your notebook, so it will help you while revising for the exams. I'll be taking 15 minutes break, but this is not a break for you guys. So in the meanwhile, what I suggest is do copy the explanation, whatever the queries you have, you guys can post your query. Those who are done with the copying part and those who have no doubts can take a break. But rest, I will not be putting over break. The session will be live, but yes, I'll be back after 15 minutes. Okay. Admin sir, Manish sir, आप ब्रेक मत डालिए. लेट द बोर्ड बी विजिबल टू ऑल द स्टूडेंट्स. आई एम गोइंग फॉर अ ब्रेक ऑफ 15 मिनट्स. ओके, ठीक है ना? यस सर. Welcome back, guys. So, Sanya, sir, in hours we took revised hours. So, why budget in days? See, herein, when talking about the number of hours, see, herein the hours are increasing, but why it is increasing? Due to some increase in number of days also. So that's why 30,000 hours in 25 days. So how much hours we can work in 26 days? 31,200 hours. But we actually work for 33,000 hours. That is 1,800 hours above my capacity. That's why I have revised it. Thank you so much, Sushil Kumar. So I think there are no queries from your end. No, Sanya, your approach is incorrect, my dear. So I hope there are no queries in this part. Now let's say in fixed overheads only, idle hours are given. Let's say 200. So in fixed overhead cost variance, there will be no change. Very simple, 45,000 overheads for 30,000 units. So for 32,500, how much? 48,750. Minus the actual overheads are 50,000. So that's why 1250 adverse. Again, in expenditure variance also, there will be no change. Very simple, 45,000 minus 50,000, that is 5,000 adverse. In volume variance also, there will be no change. Same 30,000 units we were supposed to manufacture. Actually, we manufactured 32,500 units. 2,500 units extra we manufactured into the rate per unit, that is 1.5 per unit. So 3,750 favorable. Again, in calendar also no change. No change in calendar variance also. That is 1 day extra into the rate per day, that is 1,800 per day. So this will be 1,800 favorable. In capacity variance also no change. We were supposed to work for 31,200 hours. We work for 33,000 hours. So 1,800 hours we worked above our capacity into the rate per hour, that is 1.5 per hour. So this will be 2,700 favorable. Now very important, here we'll calculate idle time variance. Herein, before calculating efficiency variance, we'll calculate idle time variance, that is 200 hours into the standard rate per hour, that is 1.5 per hour. So this will be 300 adverse. So herein we'll first calculate the idle time variance, that is 300 adverse. Now, when talking about efficiency variance, very important, or inefficiency was of 500 hours, or inefficiency in the previous question was for 500 hours. Out of this, 200 hours is what my idle hours. Out of total 500 hours, so in the previous question we calculated our inefficiency, that is of 500 hours. Of this, 200 hours is what my idle hours. So remaining 300 hours is what? My net inefficiency. So herein when talking about if idle hours are given, whatever the inefficiency we do calculate, we will subtract the idle hours. So in this question, 30,000 units, 30,000 hours. So one unit should take not more than 1 hour. So 32,500 units should take not more than 32,500 hours. But we actually took 33,000 hours. That is 500 hours extra we took. Out of this 500 hours, 200 hours is my idle time and 300 hours is my inefficiency. So this will be 450 adverse. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your query. So if idle hours are given, whatever the inefficiency is, it will be divided in two parts. We will subtract the idle hours, so balance will be treated as inefficiency. No, my dear, this is the way you have to calculate, Manohar. I request you guys to please copy the solution. Now, next case, when days are not given, when number of days are not given. If number of days are not given in the question, again, there will be no change in cost variance. The similar way, 48,750 was my overhead. The amount actually spent is 50,000. So this is 1250 adverse. When talking about fixed overhead expenditure variance, again, no change, guys. So this will be 5,000 adverse. Next is fixed overhead volume variance. 30, same again, no change, 30,000 units we were supposed to manufacture. We actually manufactured 32,500 units, 2,500 units extra we manufactured into the rate per unit, that is 1.5 per unit. So this will be 3750 favorable. Now, very important, guys, since the number of days are not given, so calendar variance will not be calculated. So calendar variance will not be calculated, we'll calculate directly the capacity variance. Now, since days are not given, so we will assume that the budgeted days and actual days are same. So we can directly calculate capacity variance, that is, we have the capacity to work for 30,000 hours, but we actually worked for 33,000 hours. How many hours extra? 3,000 hours we worked above our capacity into the rate per hour, that is 1.5 per hour. So this will be 4,500 favorable. Very important. I repeat again, this variance will be favorable. Why? Because we have the capacity to work for. We have the capacity to work for 30,000 hours, but we actually worked for 33,000 hours. That is 3,000 hours. We worked above our capacity. हमने अपनी capacity से ज़्यादा काम किया. So that's why it is favorable. See, in this way, in this part, Manohar, you have to calculate it as per units only, my dear. When talking about efficiency variance, again, no change. The work was supposed to be completed in 32,500 hours, but we took 33,000 hours. 500 hours extra we took into the rate per hour, that is, so this is 750 Edwards. So if the days are not given, there will be no change in efficiency variance, it will be same. No change in volume variance, it will be same. No change in expenditure variance, it will be the same. And cost variance also, it will be the same. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your queries. Further, I request you guys to please copy this explanation. Yes, Sanya, calendar plus capacity plus efficiency will be volume. Volume plus expenditure will be cost. So this is the purpose of this chart. So I repeat again, calendar variance plus capacity variance plus efficiency variance will be volume variance. And volume plus expenditure will be cost. Further, let's say hours are not given and days are given. Very important, guys. Hours are not given. However, days are given. So here, again, there will be no change in cost variance, no change in expenditure variance, no change in volume variance. We'll calculate the calendar variance in this case. That is 25 days we were supposed to work. We work for 26 days into, so 1 day into the rate per day, that is 1800. So this is 1800 favorable. Capacity variance, we can't calculate. The reason being the number of hours are not given. Now, very important part is the efficiency variance. Very important, guys, when talking about efficiency variance, till now what we used to do, we used to compare the hours and the units. But herein, no information is given as regards hours. So now we will be using days to calculate efficiency variance. Now, how come? Very simple, guys. 25 days, 30,000 units. 25 days, 30,000 units. Therefore, in 26 days, how many units? 30,000 units in 25 days. So in 26 days, how many units? 31,200 units. So in 26 days, we should have manufactured 31,200 units. But very important, guys, in these 26 days, instead of 31,200 units, we manufactured 32,500 units. In these 21 days, we manufactured 32,500 units. That is, my workers did my workers performed efficiently. They did a great job. How many extra units they manufactured? 1,300 extra units they manufactured. Into the rate per unit, that is 1.5 per unit. Since we are calculating the number of units, so we'll be calculating the rate per unit. If we are calculating the number of days, we'll be calculating the number of days. Sorry, if we are calculating the number of days, we'll be using the rate per day. If we are calculating the number of units, we will use the rate per unit. If we are calculating the number of hours, we'll use the rate, budgeted rate per hour. So this will be 1950 favorable. Again, the total always get tallied. If you guys have any doubts, then you guys can please post your queries. This will be favorable, Anmol, very important. Again, don't try to memorize the formula. See, very simple. In 25 days, 30,000 units. So in 26 days, कितने units manufacture करने चाहिए थे? 31,200 units. But in these 26 days, instead of 31,200 units, we manufactured 32,500 units. 1,300 units हमने ज़्यादा manufacture किए. My workers worked efficiently and they manufactured 1,300 units extra. So that's why it is favorable. I request you guys to please copy this explanation. Yes, Anmol, you can, my dear. So, guys, we are done with fixed overhead variance. When all the information is given in the question, then very simple, first cost variance, then expenditure and volume. Once volume is calculated, then we'll calculate calendar, capacity, and efficiency. Very important, guys. Calendar variance plus capacity plus efficiency will be volume. And volume plus expenditure will be cost. What if in case idle hours are given, no change in the solution except efficiency variance? Ultimately, जो 500 hours, जो भी difference आता है hours का due to inefficiency, we'll divide it in two parts. First one is idle hours and second one is inefficiency. Rest, no change. Apart from this, if days are not given, calendar variance will not be calculated. And yes, there will be some impact on capacity variance. Next case, if hours are not given, then very important, guys, capacity variance will not be calculated further. Efficiency variance will be calculated using the number of days. Rest, no change. I'm done with the explanation of fixed overhead variance. If you guys have any doubts or queries, you guys can please post your queries. Yes, Avinash, Sushil, Manohar, Mr. Bundy, any doubts? Shiv Ranjini, any doubts? Sanya, Mr. Nagbala, Shweta, Mr. Srinivasan, Mamta Yadav, Manohar, Mr. Vijay Raghavan, Swati, any doubts? Mr. Prashant, Mr. Pratna Sarthi, Hardik, Kiran Shukla. So now we are done with fixed overhead variance. So now let's start with variable overhead variances. How can you multiply the rate per day with rate per hour? Yaar? Very simple. First, calculate the number of days, then multiply it by budgeted rate per day. If you are calculating the number of hours, you have to multiply it with rate per hour. If you are calculating the number of units, you have to if you are calculating the number of units, you have to apply the rate, budgeted rate per unit. Manohar Yadav, you have to solve few questions for better understanding of the concepts. If you want me to explain anything, I can explain this for your. Yes, it is the correct approach, Mr. Bundy, to memorize the concepts rather than learning the formulas. Anmol Patwa, very important. If hours are not given, then no need to calculate capacity variance. If days are not given, no need to calculate calendar variance. Avinash, please recheck your query. I'm not getting what you are asking, but your statement is completely incorrect. 1800 is the rate per day into the number of days. So you are multiplying the rate per day into rate per hour. So what is the logic? I don't know. So please recheck. Now let's start with variable overhead. Again, very important, guys. Variable overhead variances. This information will always be given in the question: hours, units, and variable overheads. And budgeted, budget, and actual data. If in question any information is given as regards days, no, Sanya, this is the best approach you should follow. No need to modify the solution. The idle time variance will be calculated along with efficiency variance, my dear. Not like labor. Now, very important, guys. Let's say the hours are given is 30,000 and 33,000. Units are given, that is 30,000 and 32,500. And let's say the variable overheads are given, let's say 60,000 and 70,000. So this much information is relevant to calculate the variable overheads. Very important, guys, if any information is given as regards days in variable overhead, you have to ignore. The days are of no use for the purpose of variable overhead variances. So the same way we have calculated the fixed overhead cost variance, we'll calculate variable overhead cost variance. That is 60,000 overheads for 30,000 units. So for 500 units, how much? Minus the actual variable overhead, that is 70,000. So this is 65,000 minus 70,000. So this is 5,000 adverse. Now two parts. Variable overheads, expenditure variance. Now, when talking about fixed overhead expenditure variance, we have calculated it directly. That is 60 minus, if it is fixed overhead, it will be very simple, 60 minus 70. But herein, we are calculating variable overhead. And the name itself says variable. It keeps on changing. So herein, when talking about the expenditure variance, we'll assume that variable overheads are changing as per hours. Fixed overhead remain constant at all the level of production, but variable overheads keeps on changing. So herein the variable overhead changes as per hours. So herein we will be considering the hours also. So very important, guys, and very simple, 60,000 overheads for 30,000 hours. So for 33,000 hours, how much should be my overheads? Minus the actual overheads, that is 70,000. So 60,000 ओवरहेड्स होता है 30,000 आवर्स में. सो 33,000 आवर्स में कितना होता है 66,000 minus my actual overheads are 70,000. So this will be 4,000 adverse. So fixed overhead हम लोग variance हम लोग fixed overhead expenditure variance हम लोग directly calculate करते थे. But herein we have to put the impact of the number of hours also because it keeps on changing as per hours. So that's why 60,000 overhead for 30,000 hours. So for 33,000 hours, how much should be my overhead? 66,000. And the actual overheads are 70,000. So this is how I got 4,000 adverse. Now next is again last variable overhead efficiency variance. Just like fixed overhead, we will calculate variable overhead efficiency variance. 30,000 units कितने आवर्स में बनना चाहिए था? 30,000 आवर्स. So 32,500 units कितने आवर्स में बनना चाहिए था? 32,500 hours. But to manufacture these 32,500 units, we took 33,000 hours. That is 500 hours is what? My inefficiency. Into the rate per hour, that is 60,000 divided by 30,000, that is rupees 2 per hour. How come 2 per hour? 60,000 divided by 30,000 hours. So this will be 1,000 euros. So cost variance, expenditure variance, and efficiency variance, variable overhead variance is over. So it's the easiest part of the chapter. Once you are thorough with the concepts of fixed overhead variance, you can easily calculate variable overheads variance. Further, very important, guys, if information is given as regards days, ignore it. It is of no use. Further, one more point, expenditure plus efficiency will be cost variance. If you guys have any doubts in this part, you guys can please post your queries. I request you guys to please copy this explanation So guys, this chapter standard costing is over. From examination point of view, the weightage is approx 10 to 12 marks. In every attempt, you will see a question on standard costing. In every attempt, you will see a question on standard costing. Further, I tried my level best to discuss all the concepts in detail. Practically also, many companies are using this technique. So these concepts will help you to solve the questions also, and you can practically apply these concepts in your job or wherever it is. Or if you are into any sort of business, then you can apply this technique to control and to check out where the things are going wrong in your system. This technique is generally used by manufacturing concerns only. Further, I request you guys to solve the question using concepts. आप फॉर्मूला की हेल्प से एक स्ट्रेट पैटर्न वाले क्वेश्चन सॉल्व कर पाओगे. बट इफ द क्वेश्चन इज ऑन द ट्रिकियर साइड, और फर्दर if the question is relating to some missing figure, I'm telling you guys, you won't be able to solve with the help of only formulas. So better it is. No change, Sai, Divya, Sania. Some information will be given in the question as regards how much is fixed, how much is variable. So don't worry, Sania. Some information will always be given in the question. So guys, I request you to apply the concepts. आप फॉर्मूला की हेल्प से एक पर्टिकुलर पैटर्न के क्वेश्चन सॉल्व कर पाएंगे. But yes, when missing figure questions, if examiner do ask missing figure questions or some advanced problems, then you won't be able to apply the formula and solve the question. So better it is to learn the concept. Again, formulas कई बार आप भूल भी जाएंगे, but concepts are permanent. So try to solve. Initially, you will find it a bit difficult to solve the question using concept. But trust me, guys, when I was student, even it was like it was very difficult for me to apply the concept. But yes, once I started solving the question, let's say after 3-4 questions, I'll find this concept, this conceptual way much more easier as compared to learning the formulas. Formulas आप पक्का एग्जाम के टाइम कुछ ना कुछ गलत कर सकते हैं, but yes, once you are thorough with the concept, there are no chances of error. कैसा भी क्वेश्चन आप कंसेप्ट की हेल्प से आप सॉल्व कर सकते हैं. सो आई रिक्वेस्ट यू गाइज, don't get demotivated if you are not being able to apply the concepts in the question. Try to solve 1 question, 2 question, 3 question, 4 question. I assure you, after the 4th question, you will be the master of these concepts what I have taught you. So practice is the key. मैं पढ़ाऊंगा आपको सब easy लगेगा, but yes, once you start solving the question, you will face some difficulty, but I assure you, पेशेंस रखिए एंड ट्राई टू सॉल्व द क्वेश्चन इन राइटिंग. फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन में शायद थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम आए, इन सेकंड क्वेश्चन यू विल फाइंड इट बेटर, इन थर्ड क्वेश्चन मोर बेटर. सो प्रैक्टिस इज द की. प्रैक्टिस इज द की. एक कबीरदास जी का दोहा भी है कि करत करत अभ्यास के जड़मती होत सुजान, रसरी आवत जाते सिल पर परत निशान. कारज धीरे होत है काहे होत अधीर, समय पाई तरुवर परे कैतिक सींचो नीर. सो हमारे पुराने जो कवि थे उन्होंने भी बोला था कि प्रैक्टिस इज द की. अगर आप कंटिन्यूअस अगर एक पत्थर पे रस्सी घिसते रहेंगे तो पत्थर पे भी निशान पड़ जाएंगे. अगर आप किसी प्लांट्स को अगर आप पानी टाइम पे देंगे तो वो प्लांट बड़ा होगा. सो द पॉइंट इज वेरी सिंपल, प्रैक्टिस इज द की. पेशेंस एंड प्रैक्टिस इज द की. कोई भी चीज को आप रेगुलर प्रैक्टिस करेंगे, you will be the master. So thank you so much guys for your time and patience and active participation in the session. In the next session, we will start with marginal costing. Actually, this session was for marginal costing, but since I was not well, so couldn't take one of the session of standard costing. So that's why I have extended that session of standard costing. So I'll request ICAI to give me one more session for marginal costing as scheduled. So at least we will have 4 sessions on marginal costing. Again, a very interesting and a concept-based chapter. I'll be starting from tomorrow. So I request you guys You have today's time. Try to solve all the questions of study material, past practice manual, plus past MTPs, RTPs. I assure you, you will be thorough with it. In the next session, we'll start with marginal costing. So be prepared. Take care of yourself. God bless you. See you tomorrow, guys. Thank you so much, sir. I'm done.